The Metropolitan Council. It is Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. I'm calling the meeting to order. How's everybody doing today? Good?
Good.
Good. It's getting cold out there, isn't it? So good to see you today. First item on the agenda is approval of agenda. Is there a motion and a second?
Move approval.
It's been moved and seconded. Approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing ayes all, the motion is adopted. Next, we have approval of minutes. So the approval of the January 9th, 2019 Metropolitan Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion and second to approve the minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Approval of the minutes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we have public invitation. This is the invitation of interested persons to address the council on matters not on the agenda. Public comment on the agenda items has occurred in the respective committees. So I know we have a sign-in sheet. So if you are here and you haven't signed in, make sure you sign in. Otherwise, I will call people up. And so right now it's Aaron Isaacs. And we have approximately 3 minutes. Who is the timer? Okay, so Emily will be timing. Welcome to the Metropolitan Council meeting.
Yes. Madam Chair, members, my name is Aaron Isaacs. I'm a retired manager for Metro Transit. The staff can't say it, so I'm here to speak on their behalf. I think you should be ashamed of yourself for the firing of Brian Lamb as general manager. I served under every single general manager in the history of Metro Transit. He was by far the best, far and away, no comparison. He was one of the best public administrators you are ever going to meet. Not only did he build an organization with a positive culture, but he achieved more than any other general manager has. And he did that through developing people, through a strong commitment to customer service, and he knew the business. Well, when the transit system was voted by APTA as the best transit system in North America in 2016, this was deserved. This is one of the best run, financially sound, innovative, customer-oriented transit systems anywhere, and you have thrown that away. And you've thrown it away, I understand, to do a political favor and promote one person. Now, the staff can't tell you, but they are heartbroken. You have alienated them completely. They have no respect for you. They are angry. They hate you. You achieved that through this one move. And so what I'm trying to say is you need to consider what you just did by getting rid of him. It wasn't only that that it was undeserved, but then you put somebody in his place who doesn't know the business. This is not a business that you can go and slot any generic manager or administrator into it. This is a large, sprawling, 24-hour-a-day, highly specialized business that requires technical knowledge. One of Brian's great strengths is that he knew this business inside and out, better than any previous manager other than maybe Art Leahy before him. And you guys threw that away. I'm not going to take all my 3 minutes. It would be nice if you could bring him back. I'll tell you, if he didn't want to come back, put one of his deputies in, because he created a deep bench when he left. And any one of those people is superior to the gentleman that you sent over there to do it. None of them would require additional aides to show them how a bus system works or a transit system works. That's all I'm going to say, but this is not the sort of thing that should happen in government in Minnesota.
Thank you. So that was the only person signed up for our public comment. So next we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are typically enacted by one motion with no separate discussion. So
Move approval of the consent agenda as shown.
Second.
there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is passed. Then we will go with reports of standing committees. Community development, no report, right? He's not here. Environment, no report. Management, no report. Okay. Then we go to transportation. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, council members, business item number 2019-2 is the approval of an addendum to the D-Line Station Plan, confirming the planned location of the Chicago and 48th Street Station. On July 25, 2018, the council approved the final D-Line Station Plan, which established locations for all stations along the 18-mile bus rapid transit line. In its action, the council also directed staff to continue planning and community engagement activities related to the planned station at 48th Street and Chicago Avenue. The action stated that following this work and through a future action, the council would confirm or revise the planned station at this location. This addendum summarizes the additional engagement and planning since the plan approval. In September 2018, Metro Transit held a community meeting to share information and hear additional feedback on this planned action. Feedback showed broad support for a D-Line station at Chicago and 48th from local community members as well as from other parts of the city. Community feedback prompted a closer examination of an additional alternative for the southbound stop. In late 2018, Metro Transit conducted additional review of alternatives at this location. Based on this review, the addendum confirms the planned station as included in the plan, with bus stops on the northeast and southwest corners of Chicago and 48th Street. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council approve the addendum to the D-Line Station Plan, confirming the planned location of the Chicago and 48th Street Station.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'd like to say something.
Councilmember Latowski.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like I've said this a lot every time this action comes before us, but I do just want to say thanks to staff for taking the extra time to engage the community a little bit more and to really vet the options before us. With this motion today, it makes me really excited even more about the D-Line. So we can take it all to 48th and go to the Town Hall Brewery, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Councilmember Barber.
Madam Chair, council members, business item number 2019-7 authorizes the purchase of 296 Type 2 LRV tires from Siemens at a cost of $699,000. On August 5, 2018, Metro Transit met the reorder point to purchase 64 Type 2 LRV tires. This purchase was based on the expectation of a historical supplier lead time of 8 weeks and the 2017 consumption of less than 2 tires per week. Upon opening the quotes, both suppliers quoted a 24-week lead time. Based on this increased lead time and the increased usage of LRV tires in 2018 to double what it was in 2017, this emergency declaration was requested to ensure Metro Transit does not run out of the tires for light rail vehicles in 2019. The Metropolitan Council Procurement Department suggested that Metro Transit request an emergency declaration to double the purchase of the tires resulting from increased lead time and increased usage. The emergency declaration was prepared according to council policy and was approved by Westchester Regional Administrator on December 6, 2018. The usage of tires doubled in 2018 to 4 tires per week, and the lead time from the supplier tripled. With these new parameters, Metro Transit Material Management used forecasting software to determine if a new reorder point and minimum order quantity was necessary. The forecasting software suggested 2 forecasts, and due to the cruciality of the part, Material Management included the more liberal forecast of ordering 7 months supply, which is equivalent to 112 tires, when there is an 8.5 month supply, or 136 tires on hand. Due to the timing of the requisition generation and issuing of tires to maintenance work orders, Metro Transit Enterprise Resource Program created 2 separate requisitions over a 10-day period. Material Management Procurement have combined those 2 requisitions into 1 purchase order of 296 tires. Through the competitive procurement process, Siemens Industries was determined to be the lowest responsible bidder. The cost of the purchase order is approximately $699,000. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the purchase of 296 Type 2 LRV tires from Siemens at a cost of $699,000.
Thank you. Good report. Is there, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Hearing a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Munt.
Madam Chair, one of the commitments that we made to community was that we would do everything we could to mitigate both noise and vibration along our rail lines. And by grinding our tires to a perfect circle, we accomplished that. But it also means that we go through more tires. And for me, this is a wise investment in order to be true to our commitment.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes, so thank you. That brings us to the next item, which is other business. The next item is number 2019-23, which is appointment of the regional administrator. I recommend the council appoint Meredith Fadis, that is for the position of regional administrator. I would entertain a motion and a second.
Make a motion, Madam Chair.
So, second.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? So the chair has some discussion. I just want to say that I've known Meredith a long time. She took a class from me. I used to teach policy at the Humphrey School, and I think she's one of the most talented as well as smart staff people I've ever known. She's all very, very good with strategy in particular, and I think we're headed into a time where we're going to need a lot of strategies, particularly on financing. And you all know, I don't have to tell you this, you know how complex of an organization the Metropolitan Council is. And I really think she's the right person to lead it. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing ayes, all the motion is carried. So thank you. Next, the last item on today's agenda is an information item on the 2040 TPP Amendment 2 for Gold Line and the I-94 lane addition. So I think Nick is going to talk about that item.
Madam Chair, council members, Nick Thompson, Director of MTS. Thank you for this opportunity to give you an information update. I think I sent this information out to you 2 weeks ago, partly in advance because we were starting the process through TAC planning, and I wanted you to have that information prior to TAC planning. But we have an opportunity tonight. I could go through this and answer any questions that you have. So I'll go over the details of what is basically amendment number 2. Amendment number 1, if you recall, is also in process, slightly ahead of that, and that is to add the Riverview Transitway to the current revenue scenario. And that amendment 1 just completed its public input process on Monday. So future action will be coming on amendment 1, and then amendment 2 will follow that. The reason we're bringing Amendment 2 is that it was driven first by a project change on I-94 between Maple Grove and Rogers that MnDOT asked us to update the TPP to reflect some changes in that project. And because of that update, we knew that eventually we'd have to also update Gold Line, and so we decided to combine those into one amendment. So I'm going to talk about the 2 projects that are within this amendment. For Gold Line, we are adding a station in Woodbury at the end of the line that needs to be reflected properly in the TPP, and we're also upgrading the downtown stations, and so that is a slight change in how it's been depicted in the current TPP. And for I-94, the major driver is that we're adding a lane to our principal arterial and adding significant funding to the project, so that needs to be properly reflected in the process. As we bring amendments through to the TPP, we're charged with looking at, number 1, are they financially viable? Are they fiscally constrained? We do an analysis of the air quality environmental impact and equity and environmental justice impact. And then we model the performance impact of that on the regional transportation system. The Gold Line BRT amendment, I believe you had a committee of the whole update on this project in November. And so some of this information you've heard, but it was in the 2016, or it was in the current TPP with the station ending at the movie theater in Woodbury, which is also owned by the council. And through some analysis of that project, it was determined that it's cost effective to not build a parking structure there and extend the line about 0.3 miles further in Woodbury and add another park and ride. So there's advantages for changing that project in there. And also, as the project developed this year, and they began to look at the downtown routing of the project, they've decided that the stations there would be full BRT stations, and so we're reflecting that change also. The changes that we're bringing forward today are fully been gone through the Corridor Management Committee, are fully supported by the cities along there and the counties and the funding partners. So they're fully supportive of this. Looking at a map of this, on the top is the map of the corridor as it starts in Woodbury and extends along parallel to I-94 through into St. Paul downtown near the Union Depot, and then routes through 5th and 6th Street here in downtown. And that last station down at the bottom map, you show it had ended at the Woodbury Theater, and now we just extend it down a existing road and add that park and ride at the end of the line. In that movie theater parking lot today is a current park and ride for express bus services. I think we have a question.
Councilmember Rummel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. What's the difference between a stop and a full station?
So
It's the first time I've heard of that.
yeah, and we had listed them as enhanced stops, but now they'll be, which is not the full like A-line BRT station. And so now it's going to be upgraded to the full ABRT with like off-board payment, shelters, information systems. And so the stop, same number of locations you could get on and off, but more enhanced customer amenities and to make it really be an advanced transit way.
Okay.
So you are correct that that's the first time we've kind of dealt with that difference in the dedicated transit way.
Good question. Any other questions? Councilmember Kramer.
So Nick, how exactly is the Union Depot configured into things?
Sure. Madam Chair, council member, I don't have a detailed map of that here in the presentation, but the stop near Union Depot is just outside where the LRT stop is now. So if you're familiar with the Union Depot, there is also a bus layover and a pickup spot. That was one of the options considered to be in the end of the line, but through further analysis, they thought routing the Gold Line continuously through downtown would be the best for ridership. And so the connection point with like the Green Line is right at the Green Line station at the Union Depot. It's basically across the street. And then and there's a one for each direction station.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
So in the analysis of this impacts on the regional system, which is the TPP, there's no change in the project cost. That though we're adding a station, we're also removing a structured parking ramp. So we're reducing costs at one location and able to absorb that within the $420 million budget. So no impact there. No impact negatively on air quality versus what was already in the TPP. No significant change in accessibility to jobs or amenities, as we're just kind of basically tweaking the length of the project in existing location. And no change modeled in ridership. There'll be a better transitway. It's very similar to what was planned before in the TPP. So this is really a minor impact, but we do need to properly reflect where the stations are. That's a key part of our transitways in the TPP. Now for the I-94 Maple Grove project, this is a project that has changed several times over the past year. And it started even several years ago when through the Regional Solicitation, the Brockton interchange was awarded funding. That is a new interchange location in Dayton. It has since been renamed recently to the Dayton Parkway interchange. And it's part of one step in what is basically a transformation of the I-94 corridor that is underway between as it connects to the Beltway, and eventually the vision is of major changes all the way to St. Cloud. So there's many different projects going on in that corridor that have been going on for several years. We've added this Highway 610 project that connected into that, this new interchange. There's been corridors of commerce projects in the past and corridors of commerce projects coming in the future. And so a lot of projects going underway. In 2017, the legislature appropriated roughly $1 billion of new highway funding for the state. And one of the projects MnDOT identified was that this section of of highway. Pavement was in bad condition and needed a major upgrade. So they assigned $100 million of that new money to this corridor for really a major long-term concrete pavement fix on this corridor. Once that project started, they started to scope out a project. And our TPP as it exists has $100 million assigned to this corridor, but that project has grown, and so we need to reflect that. When 610 was added, the Federal Highway Administration required that eventually when that Dayton interchange was added, there'd have to be an auxiliary lane placed between those two. So that trigger has been tripped by this project. And as MnDOT developed the project, they determined that it was best to extend that lane, not just to end at Dayton Parkway, but to go all the way to Rogers. And so this project has started to grow, and we want to reflect that properly. So if you see this map, it's a combination of what has happened. The lighter blue, which goes from the 694, 494 Beltway all the way to 101, is all new pavement. So all the lanes will get a new surface. The orange area, what's currently reflected in our TPP, is having auxiliary lanes between Highway 610 and the new Dayton Boulevard interchange. And then the dotted dash red line is what is not currently reflected in our TPP, which continues those lanes all the way to 101. So we're adding several miles of general purpose lanes in this corridor. As part of the bigger vision of what's happening starting this year over the next 2 to 3 years is from the project I just described, and then between St. Michael and Albertville, they're adding a lane that was funded through Corridors of Commerce. And then further west from Monticello to Clearwater, they're also adding a lane to I-94 that is funded with that new money that was given in 2017. So MnDOT has asked us to have this amendment now because they're trying to line up all these projects to minimize the construction impacts for travelers and stage them all in a way that they're all basically, it'll be painful as a commuter through that corridor, but they'll be built at the same time rather than finish one and start the next one a couple years later. What you'll notice on this map is that there will be remaining a gap between Albertville and Monticello where there will not be new lanes or new pavement. And so you can anticipate that eventually that will be a priority for the communities on that corridor and commuters. And then also we are studying the interchange at 94, 494, 694 as part of a regional study that we have, and we expect that there'll be some priorities for investment in that area. So as the project developed, as they started as a $100 million pavement project, there's also one of the most important truck way station and truck rest areas in the region in that area. That was going to be closed because they wouldn't have access, so they decided to do major maintenance in that area. Then when you do pavement, you start to add noise walls, and then when you add the auxiliary lanes, they decided that we really wanted to try to maintain as much traffic as possible, so they added temporary lanes. And eventually it just made sense to make permanent lanes in this corridor during construction because they could do it relatively low cost over the temporary lanes. So they've added roughly $36 million to this project in the past year with all these changes, and that's on top of an interchange which the city is developing concurrently but separate from the project. So this happens to be this is one of our priority MnPass corridors, and so working with MnDOT, it did not make sense at this time to make this a MnPass corridor with the project that they were developing, because the MnPass corridor needs to go much further to make sense from an operational standpoint. We didn't have the funding to do that available. It wasn't our highest priority in the region for MnPass at this time. So working with MnDOT and the partners, they've determined that they've designed it in a way that it does not preclude a future MnPass addition to this area should there be more need in the future. So we've done that on other corridors as we've done projects in the short term, but we maintain a long-term vision that MnPass would make sense in this corridor as it continues to be a growing part of our region. So my project impact, this one does add new money to our TPP, unlike the Gold Line, which maintains the current project cost. So is important. A good question is, where did this funding come from? And so in the region, basically, there's some shifting of projects. Projects that we had identified, particularly on I-94, the Rethinking I-94 project is one that just is not ready for when we have funding allocated. So that'll shift out a year, and that frees up some funding to make this project work. But MnDOT is maintaining their commitment, no change in commitment to developing Rethinking I-94 project between the downtowns. And that is one of our number one projects identified in the TPP highway projects too. So it doesn't change the commitment, but it tends to push projects out. So eventually, at the very end of the TPP, there's some projects that that are being impacted, but for the region as a whole, we're maintaining our key priorities in the region in the short term. We're just delivering those in different years than planned. Air quality, again, no impact on our air quality in the regionally. Generally, we're determining that this really doesn't have an impact on accessibility to jobs and amenities because it's an existing highway corridor. And so there's no negative impact on that, but it's not necessarily a positive impact like a transit way is having. And in terms of performance outcomes, no meaningful outcomes have been determined at the regional level. This project has some congestion in the corridor, so at the corridor level, there's probably some expectation that there'll be some improvements in mobility. But once those changes are minor when you do it at a regional scale. So we're indicating in our modeling that there's no regional change to mobility measures that we measure. So schedule-wise, this has already been moving through TAC planning. Today is just informational. It'll come back to you for request for release for public comment. MnDOT ideally would like us to have this approved in the TPP by the end of April because they would like to start construction this construction season. But again, we've indicated to them that it's depending on it being approved. And so this is a schedule we've laid out. If it's a fairly aggressive schedule, but we are definitely allowing the normal public comment process, public comment timeframe. So we have both a transit and a highway component of this amendment, and Cole or Steve would be able to answer any additional questions if you have them after this. I can answer more questions. We have staff from the Gold Line, Charles here, also can answer questions on Gold Line today. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember McCarthy.
Madam Chair, I have a Gold Line question in terms of how are we able to maintain the cost on that? Was additional funding coming from maybe the city or the county?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, the main reason is at the Woodbury Theater, we had a parking ramp, so a higher cost structure that is no longer a parking structure needed. It's just going to be the surface lot. So we're reducing the cost at one station and replacing that reduction with the new stop. And so it's basically kept it the same general project cost.
Councilmember Rummel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have any idea what the projected timeline for the I-94 improvements?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, yes, if approved, the goal is to start some of the construction this summer. So the next 2 to 3 years, that corridor will be under construction between basically Maple Grove and Clearwater in many different phases. And part of the reason they're trying to get all that done also is that once that finishes, we start to rebuild Highway 10 and a lot of changes on Highway 10. So parallel corridors, and they're trying to have one done before they start the next one. Mm-hmm. Highway 10 is a lot of investment that we're making from Corridors of Commerce, from Regional Solicitation. And so if you live in that area, there'll be some construction impacts for a while.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, good presentation. Thank you. That moves us into reports. And so reports to share. As a chair, I just wanted to say that I wanted to thank the staff and council members, everybody that's been involved in all the orientations. There's a variety of things, everything from finance to equity to policies here at the Met Council I'm learning about. We've already been over at the Legislature, went before the Senate Local Government Committee. Just did an overview of what we're doing right now and some of the priorities and those types of things. Going to be over there again tomorrow So appreciate the staff and everybody's work on that. And I also just want to say I think that the transition is going very well. You know, I'm happy to have Meredith officially will start I think tomorrow. Saturday, and with it, and then Wes Coister will be going over to Metro Transit. So so far things have been very smooth, and glad to for everybody's help with that. So that is the chair's report. Council members, do you have any reports? Councilmember Rummel.
Last week, we had a public hearing for the Rogers wastewater treatment plant transition. MCES has picked that up, and I have to say it was the shortest public hearing I've ever been to. There was one person who reported from the city of Rogers what the memorandum that this council had passed, the city council had passed. And to me, it was an example of the collaboration and the preparation and the coordination of all the, whether it's city people or MCES people. They did all their homework, so by the time it came forward, it was beautifully done.
Great. And it's
Impressive.
Excellent. And public hearings, of course, are kind of one way, right? So it's interesting hearing all the feedback and how that goes. Great. Good to hear. Anybody else? Anything? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, I attended a meeting of the Eureka Town Board. They have already gotten their 2040 plan approved, but they're already looking at amending it. And there were some rumors going around and whatnot, and so I was asked to come down and clarify things, and because they were concerned that they needed to do a full application in order to even find out if it's something that might be feasible. And of course, we don't want them to spend thousands of dollars preparing a full application on something that might not be something that could be handled in our system. And so I met with them, answered questions, and they were very thankful for the time to understand what's going on. So
Very good. Very good. You know, we are getting some questions about the comp plans. I was going to have
Yeah, I will just say on behalf of Community Development Division and Lisa Barajas, who's sitting here, probably can explain it better than I can, but I think you're all aware that comp plans came in, a lot of them, and the council has a 15 business day requirement to review them for completeness. Those reviews are going on right now, and many of them have hit that 15-day window, and so you are seeing letters going out to your communities letting them know that more than likely their plan is incomplete. I believe all of the plans were incomplete in 2030. This time, not all of them are, but still a good majority. And by incomplete, we often mean they left out a map, they forgot to include a board resolution. They're mostly technical things that staff can solve pretty quickly. And so those letters are going out. You should be seeing copies of those. That, of course, is not the same as a 2040 amendment, which would be our first. But if you have questions about that, Lisa is here, and her staff are, of course, very available to answer those.
Good. Thank you. Councilmember Barber and then Mont.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of events in the last couple of weeks in Scott County. The first was attending SCALE, which is the Scott County Association for Leadership and Efficiency. It's a work group out there of all of the local communities and representatives from cities in the county and the township boards and watershed organizations. It occurs monthly, so we'll try and bring you out there at some point in time. But this one was a discussion of the legislative priorities. And, so it was interesting, and I think that a lot of things have changed, but you do see a focus moving towards housing and the need for how to plan for better housing in their communities and that type of thing, or at least a variety of housing in their communities. So I thought that was refreshing. Also attended a group that's called the Scott County Live, Learn, Earn effort. And what it is it's a group that's working in Scott County as kind of an output of SCALE has a focus on housing and transportation and workforce readiness. I serve on the housing work group, and Lisa Barajas was very kind to come out there to this meeting as they're transitioning to a more active phase with this work group. And we had multiple questions on comprehensive planning, our role in housing, what funding options are out there, and kind of the relationship between us and Minnesota housing and those types of things. And I think we've gotten to a point where we'll probably have an active dialogue going forward. I don't think it'll be the last time we'll be out there answering questions, but it was really well, and I really appreciate staff coming out. So.
Excellent. Good report. Councilmember Mund.
Two things. This morning, Councilmember Reynoso and I joined elected officials from Minneapolis, Hennepin County, and the West Metro to meet with the Minneapolis building trades. And there's a tremendous amount of excitement around heavy construction beginning this spring for Southwest Light Rail. For folks who don't know, my talking point is that this creates 7,500 jobs and a payroll of $350 million, and those paychecks are spent in nearly every county in the state of Minnesota. So this is a lot of economic fuel happening. Also, last week, I met with the Southwest Light Rail Community Works Committee. That's a committee of elected officials from Hennepin County and the 5 cities along the line where we coordinate our development. And there was a lot of appreciation for a study that Metro Transit's TOD office did. What they found was that 30% of the multifamily development in the region occurred around 2% of the land during the last 8 years. That 2% of the land is the land within 6 blocks of our fixed transitway stations. Similarly, 33% of the commercial development is happening on that 2% of land. So that makes a really compelling argument that investments in public transit are driving both new home and commercial development.
Good report. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you. That brings us, I think, to the end. Let's see, Regional Administrator, any report?
I just want to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to serve as your regional administrator. I think in the 8 years of the Dayton administration and the 7.5 that I've been with the council, this council has accomplished a tremendous amount, and I am so proud of all that work, and I am thrilled to be able to continue to serve here and see through some of the projects that I've spent the last 7.5 years working alongside you all on. So thank you for putting your trust in me and for offering me the opportunity.
Good report. General Counsel?
No report.
Anything? Okay. That brings us to the end of our meeting, so thank you all. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.